Wakefield, and welcome to the May 28th, 2020 Town Council meeting. I'll call this meeting to order. First, we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance. And if you'll give us just a few seconds to get the graphic up on the board, then we'll continue with the Pledge of Allegiance once that happens. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, for liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Attendance, all of the counselors, I believe, are present. So Town Administrator Mayo and I are in Stoneham gear, full-on t-shirts and hats, because Ed Dombrowski made a bet when he was chair on who could, which town could fulfill the census most robustly. And Stoneham beat us by a few percentage points. So as a result, we are wearing Stoneham gear to honor that bet and be good sports about it. So that explains why we look this way. Sherry, I believe we do have someone signed up for public engagement.
Yes, we do. We have Eric Bertrand.
Okay. And Eric, just so I saw you, yes, you are. And with regard to public engagement, you have, I need a reminder, 3 minutes?
Yeah,
yes.
3 minutes, yes.
Yeah. 3 minutes to talk. And counselors may comment or we may not, but we'll certainly take what you say into consideration. So please go ahead. Identify yourself and your address.
Thank you very much. My name is Eric Bertrand. I live at 41 Crescent Street in Wakefield. Some of you may already know me, some of you don't. I own Wakefield Computer Hospital on Albion Street. I've been here 13 years. I've grown up here. I went to high school here. I graduated here when you could graduate normally. But I'm not addressing you all tonight about my business or what I do or what's going on my street. My concern is with the small business restaurants that we have in town, like Harrington's, like Public Kitchen, Sakura, all the restaurants we have. I know the owners. I know them well. I've spoken to them a lot. I worry in the next couple of weeks when phase 2 starts that 25 to 50% capacity is just not going to do it for these places. Restaurants fail that go to 25, that fill up at 25 to 50% capacity. They don't succeed, and they're already struggling with takeout now. My idea, and it may have already been discussed, I apologize if it has, is, on Friday and Saturday nights, maybe from 6 to midnight or 6 to 11, close down Main Street from Richardson to Albion. So in front of Sakura and Public Kitchen, they'd have all of Main Street, but you'd still have east-west traffic going through Princess over to Albion and Chestnut to Center. You could do that in front of Harrington's. You could also do that in front of Cafe Italia and Harrington's. With just Jersey barriers, lights, it wouldn't be totally difficult. Other towns in this area do not have the capability that we do in Reading or Stoneham to set up a situation like this. It's just really offering the opportunity to make money. I don't think it would be that difficult, but I would like to hear what people's thoughts are on that.
Thank you very much, Eric, for the thoughtful comments you made. We might not give you our thoughts right this minute, but I think if you listen to this meeting and continue, everything's on the table for us. We've already started talking about how we can do some things uniquely and to support our small businesses. So it really is on our plates. And thank you so much for bringing it to the table. But I would say, like, stay tuned.
Yeah, I appreciate your time. I'm just worried when phase 2 starts, we'll still be talking about it, instead of having it done. And they'll be, they need July and August.
Sure.
And if we don't do something in June, a sidewalk's not going to do it. We need the full Main Street. So I just want that on, we need the full street. That's my opinion, not a sidewalk. So I appreciate your time.
Sure. Thank you very much for your opinion.
Thank you.
Sherry, anyone else?
No, nobody else has identified themselves.
Okay, excellent. So next we'll go to the approval of the May 11th minutes. May I have a motion for those, please?
So moved.
In a second?
Okay.
Excellent. Any discussion on the minutes? Hearing no discussion, all in favor of approving the minutes? Oh, we have to do roll call. Thank you. Vice Chair Galvin,
Yes.
Jonathan Chines,
Yes.
Maureen Butt,
Yes.
Ed Dombrowski,
Yes.
Peter May,
Yes.
Paul Donaco,
Yes.
and myself, unanimous. Now we'll turn to what I think is the heart of one of the most important parts of our meeting today is the COVID-19 update. And with us, we have Ruth Clay and Tom Walsh, as well as Steve to start out, just letting folks know what has been done, what plans are in the making, what we'll continue to do as we move forward through the stages. Steve.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think we're going to start off with Tom Walsh and then go to Ruth, and then you can circle back to me, okay? So if you could give it over to Tom, that'd be great.
Hi, everyone. Nice. Hi, everybody. Just an update on what's happened. The town has responded well to the pandemic. All our departments, initially when we started getting into this virus, we had made up contingency plans for all departments, all guidelines, and they have been followed pretty well. Our major thing was to try to keep all the town employees safe. And I think we've done that. I don't believe, I can't speak for the school department, but I believe that we've not had one town employee that was COVID plus, that was a positive. So that's a good thing. All the rest of everybody that was working got their jobs done. We basically went to remote for most of the town. Town hall was remote, and that has worked out well. IT did a fantastic job. By the time we actually shut down town hall, I think we only had to have 1 or 2 people connected, and that has worked well. I'd say that our people were safe and productive at the same time, which was good. We wanted to also keep our police and fire, our first responders, safe because we only have small forces. And if we had a reduction because of the virus, we would have been scrambling to try to fill those positions. So I can tell you that I fill out workforce reports into the state every day. And as of right now, we only have 1 person out in each of the public safety departments, and both of them are FMLAs. So we've kept our people safe, healthy, and productive. I don't know if we want to talk about going into opening the buildings now, or you want to do that at a little later on in the talk. But I think everything that we've tried to do and stuck to our game plan has been successful. I feel good. And then the other programs that we established are giving out the masks first to our vulnerable populations, and then to the townspeople themselves. We gave out over 65,000 masks over 2 separate events. I don't think any town has accomplished that feat. So kudos to everybody who helped us in that. So in all, I think we've done well. If I get into the town buildings, as far as opening, right now we are trying to get it to phase 1. So phase 1 is basically getting some of our employees back into the building so that they'll get acclimated to back working in a safe environment. So what we've done is we have gone out and gotten protective measures for either whether it's plexiglass or reconfigured some areas and made it so that when people come in, they'll feel safe and that they'll be able to work well within the confines of what we have. Right now, we're working on trying to get signage, which is the next part of our thing when we get to open up to the public. I envision the first part of phase 1, which is our town employees, will be put into effect on June 1st. So that'll be where some people will start gradually coming in, working, getting used to the environment. If they have any issues, we can then address them before having the public in. We should have ironed out any problems that we have from that point till what we have as a June 15th opening, which would be our phase 2. Now the phase 2 would be where we now have people coming to town hall during limited hours. We would open 5 days a week from 8:30 to 12:30. We would have a greeter meet them at the front door, then find out what their business is if they have an appointment. Everything will be in appointment only mode for probably a couple of weeks till we get a handle on seeing what the response is. At that point, we may change it, but at this, it'll be a greeter. By law, we have to write down everybody who's coming in because we have to know who we are coming in contact with. They will be directed to conduct their business, whether it be going to the tax collector or to the town clerk, DPW, whatever it is. We're going to try to keep the second floor and the basement closed, but we will. The only area that they'll have access to will be the Board of Health, because this is their most busy time from now until June 30th. So there'll be about 12 days where they'll have to take care of the customers. But again, we're going to try to do it as appointment only, or we'll direct them to whether it be the elevator or the side door. Everybody's been working on the plan. We've had like 15 people on the reentry team. Everyone's done a fantastic job. The draft is out on the phase 2. It addresses all of the issues, whether it be, the preparation of your office to just self-awareness, hygiene, because we have guidelines and orders from the state and how we proceed with that. And everything has been put in there between myself, Ruth, every member of the team, especially Amy Forziati. Amy has put the draft together with all our thoughts. It's a very good finished product. As soon as we get it, the final touches on, we will put it out to the council. I'm sure Mr. Mayor will probably do that. And I think going forward, we'll be fine. As far as what happens after that, the phase 3, I think we're going to have to wait and see how we work it out with the public in our own, town, and then find out what the state's going to do in guidelines. We could see a surge in the state, and if that happens, I could see where the governor may want us to pull back. So I think us slowly getting in and working with the hours that we have will accommodate. If we had to reverse our course and go for a shutdown, it wouldn't take us that much. But we're still having people working remotely from home, and especially people who may have a problem with their immune system. We want people to be safe. If they can do their work at home, we encourage it. It's part of our process, and we try to accommodate everybody's wishes. But if it's within our realm, we'll do it. The team we have, everybody's been working hard to get it done, and Mr. Mayo's been great with us on that, and giving us any backing we need and any money spendings we have. And I have to say that it looks like most of the money we've spent, we should be able to recover on reimbursements, whether it be through the federal government or through the state. And if anybody has any questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
Tom, before the questions, can you just speak, I know we had some questions from members of the council, but with regard to some of the other buildings that might open. So we know Town Hall is one of the first rollout. It makes sense to me that as much as everyone wants to get back to the library, that's probably a last rollout because of the high risk population and the amount of touches that go on. So can you just speak to,
Sure.
And I know Catherine is part of the emergency team, so she is heavily involved in the planning of that as well.
Right. What we're attempting to do now, we have 3 buildings where we're going to have to wait a while because of what they do. One is the library. They're still waiting on guidance. What we're trying to do now is to do like a curbside pickup. So we're trying to get that in force. Hopefully we can get that done maybe by June 15th to have all that in. But as far as anything else with the library, it's very difficult right now because you'd have to set up all types of protective measures, which still wouldn't really be effective because of the way that people come into the library, how they use the computers, you get the books. It's a touch place. Everybody's touching everything to keep it clean. So the guidelines, we're still waiting from the state to get all of those functions in. So that's one area where I'd say we're probably months away from actually getting a full library productive again. It's going to be the same with the senior center. there is no way that we could conduct having seniors come back in to the most vulnerable population, and then have them meeting together, and then and they do a lot of things. That we have a very active senior center, and to conduct classes and do all that stuff. That'd be another thing where I'd say that's going to be months out still. Until guidance comes down from the state, and they say we think this can effectively do it. It's not. We can't introduce it. And the same thing with the Civic Center, because of what we have to bring kids back in. The state still hasn't come up with what they really want to do, what's going to be functioning. So to open it up to the clubs and to do the thing, I don't think we can do it. I believe we could probably open up the rental units that we have within the Civic Center. That can be done. We've been talking with Dan on that, but it's still, because we are the owner, there are things that we would have to make sure. If we know that they have too many people in their office, we have to make sure that that office is safe, because the onus would be on us, because we would be, let's say, negligent to not take care of the issues. If there's 5 people working out of a 2-room office, it'd be very difficult. I don't know the layouts over there, but just to give you an example. So we would have to mitigate that before we would let those people back in. But I think that would probably be the easiest thing to get going initially with the Civic Center, until the state came down with better guidelines for us to do it. So those 3 buildings would be tough. The public safety is going to remain what we're doing now, appointment only. The people have access to get into the lobby. That's where we have restrooms where anybody who enters the town can go to use a restroom, but everything else will be the same. We've got protective measures going up for the police. Because they have to do like personal interviews with the people who are looking, like, say, for gun permits. They are looking at getting the plexiglass larger size because of how they have to interact with the public. So that building, it will be functioning as it is now. It's still viable, but with limited ability to get into there. So everyone is a step. Town hall, like I said, is already in progress, and that'll be the first building where I'd say we're pretty functional. But the rest of them, because of what we have to do with it, and because the guidelines, the state is still in limbo with some of that stuff, because they're not sure of what's really out there and how our numbers are. I mean, right now the numbers look decent. They've been going down, but if there's a spike, what they do, and then how are they going to address it? It's the same thing. It's almost like what we're dealing with the school department, trying to get guidance. So right now, like having graduations and everything, it's just impossible to bring in more than 10 people in anywhere that have people congregating. You just can't do it. So and we're still under a state of emergency. I wanted to make that known, because I've seen some things. You see stuff posted on Facebook, and people don't understand that when you're in a declared emergency, certain things prevail, and things have to go through proper channels. If anybody wants to do something that's out of the ordinary, that's a change in what we have right now, they have to go through the health director in this town. So anybody who is trying to make any changes, it's the same thing with business. If you open your business, the health people have to check it out. So it's the same thing with the schools. The health director will then look at everybody's plans and then give it a thumbs up or down. That's how it has to work. That's why we're in an emergency. We're in a health crisis. So those are the things that happen. I hate to, be the bearer of bad news for that type of thing, but that's how it works.
Thank you so much, Tom.
You're welcome.
Just before we move on to Ruth, does anyone have any questions of Tom? I don't see hands up, but any of the counselors? No. Okay. Ruth, what can you tell us about your updates from your lens?
Sure. Thanks for having me on tonight. Couple of things. I wanted to follow up on a couple of things that Tom had said, and emphasize that most of the decisions are not local. The governor's office have orders and guidelines, And that's what we need to follow. And I say that also to the gentleman with the public participation. So some things, very few things, we have control over. Most things we need to follow the state, and we're not allowed to deviate or be less strict. Unfortunately, as Tom said, the health departments have been given the dubious distinction of enforcement for all of this. So yes, if people have questions, they should definitely ask us. And oh, and one other thing, and I don't mean to contradict Tom, but we have had some employees who are positive, but those are employee community cases that hasn't had anything to do with being an employee of the town of Wakefield. Okay, so today's number for the cumulative number of positive COVID cases that we've had in Wakefield is 293. We have had no new cases. I even hate to jinx myself, but we've had no new cases for the past 2 days. Not that anybody cares, but Melrose is kind of roughly in the same situation. It's been very flat, which is fantastic. So, so the second thing I wanted to talk about was the money that the health department has spent. We were given $100,000 at the very beginning because we are part of a health district. I've tried to use the money 50-50. It's not always exactly that. We have spent the money primarily on salaries for extra time for our public health nurse who's only scheduled to work 25 hours a week between the two communities, so even less per Wakefield. We've also been paying school nurses overtime and extra time for when they worked over school vacation week. We've used some of the money to defray the costs of isolation and quarantine rooms at the Sheraton Four Points that Tom arranged for us. Those costs are being split between Wakefield, Melrose, and Linfield. And primarily the rest of the money has been spent on Mass. And we have almost spent that money down at this point. We have till June 30th. I mean, actually till now to spend it. I'm requesting a extension. It's a no-cost extension till August 30th. So we just have a little bit more time to spend it all down. Let's see, governor's orders. We spend a lot of time on conference calls with the state 4 days a week, as well as answering people's business and the public's questions and complaints about the governor's orders that aren't always specific or clear. And our inspector is out in the field doing enforcement of outdoor complaints, routine housing. We are not addressing now if we had to go inside the unit, but outdoor complaints we're responding to, and complaints related to COVID-19. Transitioning into the governor's order about hair salons and barbershops, I was asked to address what we're doing with that. So that, as most people know, those businesses were allowed to start on Monday. Our inspector has been out starting on Tuesday, going to each of the businesses that are open. A lot of them are not open yet, but for the ones that are open, she has a packet of information. We printed out all the posters that they're supposed to have out and checklists they're supposed to have up, information that they're supposed to have. And we've gone door to door as we have this information, do you have any questions? Do you need any help with any of the materials? So we've been doing a lot of work on that, as well as I said, the complaints. The Board of Health has been meeting weekly, almost every week weekly, including last night. And at that time, if you may recollect, the board had passed 3 emergency orders. One was declaring a public health emergency. One was not allowing personal services to operate that the board put in place before the state. And the third one was face coverings, again, done before the state. So the board has repealed the mass covering, face coverings order, as well as the personal services order, so that we're in sync with the governor's order, keeping the public health emergency order. The other main thing that the Board of Health did last night was approve the school committee's plan for graduation, which I understand has changed since last night. But the plan they presented last night, they approved. Superintendent Lyons joined us on the call. It was a plan that had small groups, up to 18 families at a time, going onto the field. Kids would walk across the field, across the stage, have their names read, get their diploma, have opportunities for pictures, and then leave. Done by homeroom, so there'd be no more than 18 at a time, and that would take 2 days. My understanding is that I think that plan is changing, and it might be a mix of that plus something later after July 18th. But the part of that they were presented with last night, not a future ceremony, but the current plan for ceremony in June, was approved. And, oh, and the other thing the Board of Health did last night was acknowledge the difficulties that the food service businesses have been enduring and will continue to endure for the foreseeable future, and lowered the permit fees for restaurants and retail food by 25% just for this coming year, which is July 1st to June 30th. So that's about it. Questions?
Any questions for Ruth from the council? I'm looking at hand waves, but anyone who can't do that. Yeah, Jonathan, are you doing something?
Sorry, I do have a question, and this is really probably a combination of questions between Director Clay, Director Walsh, and Mr. Mayo. The first thing I wanted to ask, and Ruth, I really appreciate sort of the summary of the spending so far on the $100,000 that we got as a health district. I'm assuming that's not the sum total of our spending as a community when it comes to sort of COVID response. And so, Mr. Mayo or Mr. Walsh, I don't know if you have a rough idea as to sort of where we are from a spending standpoint, and
I would,
any ideas to how much of that might be reimbursable.
Probably we're approaching between $300,000 and $400,000 between fire overtime, masks, overtime in other areas, cost of the hotel rooms that we got for police and fire and first responders. We will be looking for reimbursement for that via FEMA and through the CARES Act. So it's very likely that 100% of that could be reimbursed between those two, or close to 100%. The problem is that the FEMA money won't be in until, I don't believe the FEMA money will be in until next fiscal year. It's not really a problem, it's just a timing issue. And the hopefully round 1 of the CARES Act will go in, will come in before July 1st, but As the council may recall, we're going to have an article at town meeting to cover those shortages, and then with reimbursement coming later. So nothing that is scary. Let's put it that way.
Okay, great. No, thank you. Appreciate that. Second question, and sorry, I have two other questions I wanted to talk through. The second question for Ms. Clay, just curious if you have any sort of updates or kind of lessons learned from the tracing work that the department's been doing. Any sense as to what the most common mode of transition's been among the 290 or so cases that we've had? And anything from there that you've been able to learn and kind of apply to our response on a go-forward basis.
Well, we'll be when this is over, we'll be looking back at and lessons learned and things. The numbers are a compilation of households. One person, a spouse is positive, then the other spouse and/or the kids become positive. A great number of those cases are in long-term care facilities, and then the rest are community-based.
Do you have a sense of the 290 or so cases, how many are long-term care and nursing facilities?
We haven't broken it down at this point. We're kind of busy trying to get through each day.
Yeah, understand. And you guys have been doing a great job. Just the final question I had, maybe for Mr. Mayor or Mr. Walsh, as we're looking at reentry, particularly for the rec department, while sort of the civic center as a building is kind of one set of considerations, has there been any thought so far in terms of some of the summer programs that the rec department would run that might be more outdoors, and whether those might be on a different timeline? I know there's still a lot of uncertainty in terms of the state requirements, but curious if there's been any thought or planning in that area as well.
I would say there's been a lot of thought and a lot of planning with no guidance to go by, with our rec director who's chomping at the bit to do anything. He was so thrilled to even open up the tennis courts.
Yeah, sure.
It was allowed. So yes, we talk all the time about this. He's ready to rock whenever he can. I'm sure parents are ready to take advantage of this, but we're really looking for that guidance and that number of kids we can have, and is it going to be considered a camp or not a camp? Or there's a lot of there's a lot of guidance that we're waiting for, frankly, and Ruth might be able to jump in there as well, because as soon as that happens, we're ready to go. Most will be contracted though. We're not going to hire all these kids like we used to do, because we don't know. So it'll be a contracted program. That'll be one thing that'll be different.
So there is a certain amount of guidance and certain activities that are allowed now. And Dan and Steve have that information. Camp guidance is forthcoming. However, there are very, very specific regulations as to what the definition of a camp is and what the definition of a camp isn't. Mm-hmm. The purpose of permitting the camps is not to be an onerous government. The purpose is the safety of the kids. So we will be looking at the proposals from everybody, because historically people try to get around the regulations by making it 15 minutes shorter or whatever. Mm-hmm. And the safety of our kids is number one. So we will be looking at that.
Great. Thank you. And again, thank you, Ruth, Tom, for everything that you and your teams are doing. I know it's been a long few months, and there's been an enormous amount of effort that's gone through. So really appreciate your commitment and everything that you've brought to the town.
Thank you.
Any, Julie, and then Peter May.
Well, thank you. Thank you both for the updates. I have one clarification question and just a couple of follow-up. So Ruth, when you say that we have repealed the face coverings order, I just want to be clear that is still in effect because the state has essentially regulated that. Right. Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. I'm still kind of amazed that people are not wearing masks, and I want to make clear that there's
I'm glad you made that clarification for everybody.
Okay. Tom, I know we spoke last time you were here about maybe getting the Red Alert app set up. Has there been any progress on that?
That I'm not sure of. I think Jen might have been working on it. She may have some knowledge of that.
Okay.
It shifted over because Jen handles our communications.
Okay, so we can follow up with her and try to get that. Okay, and then finally, maybe this is mostly for Steve. I had some reports today of lots of kids on parks, and I wonder where we are on opening parks. I know it's not an easy question or answer.
And also in that, throw in dog parks, because I got 2 emails about dog parks.
Okay,
well.
let's take the kids park first, because they're more important. I'll get a lot of emails on that one, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Ruth, do you want to jump in on that one, and then I'll follow up on the parks?
Sure. The dog parks are allowed.
No, I'll do the dog park.
Oh, okay, the regular parks?
Regular parks, yeah.
Yeah, so there is guidance from the state on open spaces in parks, and people can passively recreate in parks. There can't be organized games or activities that use equipment, but we encourage people to be outside and get fresh air and exercise, as long as they're at least 6 feet away from other people, and if they're not, they need to have a face covering.
So I guess I look at that they can run and play away from each other, and they can't play tag, and they or shouldn't play tag, and can't play volleyball.
Sorry, and just to be clear, playgrounds are...
It's a wishy-washy answer. Playgrounds, apparatus are still closed.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks I wasn't aware of that. Thank you.
Yeah, park space is, you know what, if it's been happening since March, frankly, we've closed down the basketball hoops, but if, people are socially distancing, and I drive by the Common a lot during the day, and they've been doing really well there, and you see people playing catch, I guess they're in the same family group, people playing lacrosse. We're reminding them, but we're not. It's impossible for us to close down all of those open spaces. So, regarding the dog park, if I answered that question, the dog park, the guidance in the dog park says that dogs need to be socially distanced, either by leash or by voice command, as do the people that are there. I guess under the guidelines, we could open the dog park. That I've read, I've kind of held off because I don't know how we enforce that at any moment of the day. Isn't a dog park all about socialization between the animals and everything? I seem so. If I have received a few inquiries about that, I kind of was going to wait till phase 2 in my own mind as people come more together, but that's just my own opinion. I think some of the larger parks have become places where dogs run free, and we've kind of let that happen, to be honest.
On the dog parks, there's absolutely no way in phase 1 we can keep the dogs socially distant. People will not bring their dogs to the dog park and keep them on a leash.
Correct.
Maybe. I mean, but I'll put $100 on the table now that says that that's not going to happen. That's the whole purpose of the fenced-in dog park. And as someone with 2 dogs, believe me, I get it. But I just think during this first phase, that's a tricky one to open.
Riley agrees.
Yes, my 2 would agree too. Even on a leash, they're not going to socially distant. Peter, you had a question?
Yes, please. Hi, Ruth. You have heard Eric Bertrand earlier, right? Eric was speaking in a public statement about the restaurants, right?
Sure.
I know the state controls really what we're doing with the restaurants, correct?
That is correct. And we were told yesterday, or Tuesday. I can't remember. I have on too many conference calls with the state. We were told actually we were going to be getting guidance this week for restaurant reopenings, but it's Thursday evening and I don't have anything yet. So at least that makes me feel like that's imminent, that they'll be coming out with guidelines. That being said, the guidelines may still not make it economically viable for a lot of places.
So I know you probably have to guess, but you're thinking 25% for indoor dining as a start, or maybe up to 40%.
Yeah, we have no idea what the number is going to be.
Right.
So we're waiting.
Okay, how about this? Why don't we expand the outdoor dining? Eric makes a great point. I know we don't have full control, but we're killing our restaurants in town. I agree with Eric 100%. I feel very badly about this. Maybe some thoughts should be made towards if, say next week, the state says, hey, 25%. All the restaurant people say, hey, we need at least 75%. We're still killing our businesses. We have to do something for them. Make it a festival, I tell you, every day. Have them on the street.
Yeah, we won't be able to override basically the rules that the governor sets, but that doesn't mean we can't be creative with space.
Put tents outside, do something.
Tents are not considered open. They're not considered open space, but I know what you're getting at.
So I just want the town council, Steve, everyone online to know that we can't afford to have these businesses wiped out. I think people are smart enough that after 10 weeks, they know how to social distance. I think it's appalling if we can, which one of us, figure something out to help them. So that's my piece. Sorry for my voice. Thank you, Ann.
Oh, thank you, Peter. And I think what you and Ruth are both saying makes sense. Of course, we want to help our businesses and our restaurants as best as we can, but we have to do it within the state guidelines. So I know that this group has been working to figure out how to be creative, how to think outside the box. And I have faith that they're going to do everything they can within the guidelines to help our businesses. Ed, and then Paul. Ed Dombrowski.
Thank you. I want to echo what Councilor May was saying in terms of restaurants. You hear a lot of restaurant owners talking about the fact that if they're at 25, 30, 50% capacity, it's a real question for them as to whether they can even open and be a viable entity. And most will say they can't. They'll just say that the numbers just don't work for them. I do know that Mr. Mayo, in talks with him over recent weeks, has spent a lot of time and focus on trying to be creative in terms of finding spaces that may be available. And I appreciate, those efforts so far. I know a lot of what we talked about in the Envision Wakefield downtown revitalization talked about the idea of, creating more open spaces outdoors for dining. But this is obviously a little bit different and more immediate. My only concern is our next meeting, I think, is later in June. So almost a month away, and I don't know if there's anything we can do more proactively. So if we get that guidance we're talking about, or if we can come up with creative solutions that are within the parameters of the guidance we currently have, if that's something that we could, at least bestow some authority to say, Mr. Mayo and the task force to be able to make those decisions on now, in terms of blocking off streets or closing off locations and the like. And I'm not saying we should figure out all the details now, but I do think if we can bestow that authority upon Mr. Mayo and his team, it would go a long way as to not slow down an approval process by, say, this body to allow for that sort of thing to happen. So if there's a general consensus of this body that that's a direction we should go in, perhaps we could vote or at least indicate some guidance as a council so that there isn't a delay getting us to the next meeting, if you'd so inclined, Madam Chair.
Sure. I think that's a great idea. I'll throw it back to Steve Mayo, but I also think I have no problem calling a meeting, calling a special meeting directly addressing this issue so we can really get into the weeds if we get some more guidance. So I think that would be easy to do, and we would just need to follow the posting with regard to public meetings, that line, but I have no problem doing that. Steve, what would be your preference?
Yeah, we can certainly, if the council wants to, give our team an ability to allow a restaurant or retail business, frankly, same thing, because our retail businesses are struggling to come out to the sidewalk, come out to the street, and do something creative with the traffic. That's great, and we'll certainly do that. I think that one issue that is restaurant specific, however, is going to be the serving of alcohol in these outdoor spaces. And that is the licensing authority there is the town council. I don't believe the town council can give that away, so to speak. And we don't even know how that's going to happen yet. There's, I believe I shared with the council a draft of a law down at that is at the State House right now, that would basically allow the town council to go through a very, or the licensing authority, which is the town council here, a very streamlined process to allow that serving of alcohol as they expand their footprint, because that's a big part of the restaurant business too. If you take these businesses outside, they're going to want to serve drinks and people have the whole experience, or they may not go. So I'm frustrated like Ruth is. I keep checking for that guidance on restaurants every day. And I'm on those multiple calls too, and unfortunately they aren't forthcoming. But I agree, we want to help those restaurants. But what we have done in the interim, if I can maybe go over into some of the business reopening discussion, because we've kind of morphed into that, is we're working very closely with the chamber, and the chamber has just put out a pretty a survey with 12 or 13 questions, kind of asking people. Would they go to restaurants? What nights would they go to restaurants? Would they more apt to go outside or stay inside? This just went up today. Jen McDonald was very, helped out the chamber on. The chamber did a great job, John Smolinski. And it also asks what nights or days you'd be more apt to go to a restaurant, because we can't shut down the streets every day, as much as I'd like to have that festival every day, Councilor May. I don't think we can do it every day. But if it's Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday night, then maybe we can make some items there, make some adjustments on those days. So we are thinking creatively there. We've also put together a reopening guide for businesses, which links to the Massachusetts standards. This has not been out yet. I'd like to have more standards to link to in here for people. Unfortunately, you hear they're not all there. So there is a lot of that work that is going on and trying, and I am waiting every day for some sort of guidance that we can run into and that we can use. So I agree with all of that, and I agree with Mr. Bertrand and opening up those areas and those nights. I think we also have to be cognizant of some restaurants that maybe aren't in the downtown, that don't have space to open up as well. And I'm thinking of places down on Tuttle Street and what have you that are also, so it's gonna be holistic for the entire town. But yes, I'm happy if the council wants to give us the authority to maybe do some outdoor commerce, whether it's retail or, and again, all within the guidelines, because we don't have the retail guidelines yet. And we also have to be careful that we don't have 500 people down on Main Street in Wakefield. As much as we'd love that, that could be, breaking some of the other rules, so that we have to kind of go gingerly here.
Sure. I think that's a great idea. And if we have to come back for the licensing part of it, when the legislature finally acts, we can do that. That can be a quick meeting.
Yeah.
Before we take a vote on that, Ed, I see Paul, Jonathan, and Maureen have raised their hands. Paul Donaco. Paul, unmute.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A quick question going out forward on this. I didn't want to overstep the two different items on the agenda, updates on the COVID and the business reopening, but as Steve said, it seemed to have morphed slightly into one another. So let's work with just the COVID updates. Ruth, we received information from the state regarding what each grouping is going to be responsible for in regards to health concerns, correct? So you should already know what phase 1 and phase 2 are going to have, correct?
Kind of. So there's a definite list of who's in phase 1. There's a list of who's in phase 2. However, it omits a lot of different businesses. So we've been trying to get information for businesses such as tanning, dance studios. We think they're in phase 2. It's not specifically articulated. So for some, yes, for some, no. And the specific, for ones that are in phase 1, like offices and hair salons, there's very specific guidance. For things that are in phase 2, we do not have specific guidance yet. And I just want to remind everybody that the earliest date for phase 2 is June 8th. That may or may not happen on June 8th, but that's the earliest.
So restaurants are definitely June 8th. But we do not have the guidance on it.
Nope. Restaurants are
restaurants are phase 2. Isn't that June 8th?
Right.
Earliest.
It'll be yeah. But restaurants are there's restaurants and there's restaurants. So yes, the word restaurant says phase 2. However, until we get very specific information about what they mean by restaurants, I can't tell them anything. I don't know anything.
Oh, thank you, Ruth. I appreciate the response. So my comments to my fellow councilors is going to be this. We all need to be proactive in supporting the businesses that come open at each phase. If we, and no disrespect, Steve, seriously, if we just let Steve say that he is going to allow a business to come out to the street and we don't know that, we can't be proactive. So I'd be more is to have a quick Zoom meeting and saying, this is my plan, Steve telling us, this is my plans, X, Y, and Z. Now when we want to be actively promoting these businesses, we know exactly what Mr. Mayo is going to have out there, and at least we won't be guessing or having people ask us, does that apply to me or does it apply to me? It would just be a quick meeting, in my opinion. So I'd be more in favor of just having, at least have an idea of who's going to be able to come to the street, which I think is a great idea. And I told Steve, I said, I wouldn't even matter giving up the parking spaces in front of every restaurant in order to afford them more seating, because I thought that was a great option there, and barrel off the spaces to accommodate that. Without having that, if we can't shut down the whole street, that is. But if the streets can't be shut down, that's still a viable option, I think, to get more seating outside for the businesses, if that is an available option to us. So it's just a couple of points. My opinion. Thank you, Madam Chair.
No, Paul, all good points. I think if we need to have a meeting, we certainly will. I can't imagine Steve's going to make this decision and we're not going to know about it, nor would we not know exactly what the businesses can do so we can proactively push this out. So I'm really confident that if Steve and his committee, if the task force make these decisions, we'll know moments after that. If Steve feels like we need to have a Zoom meeting, then absolutely. Not against that at all. It's just we have to deal with the, the posting of it and a delay. So I would hate to have that happen if they can make the decision quickly on what restaurants can do with, you know, with Ruth and Tom. So great comments. And let's see, I think, let's go to Maureen and then Jonathan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just, following up on the conversation, thank you so much, Tom and Ruth, for updating all of us. And thank you so much for all the work that you're doing. I want to echo what Paul said and Ed kind of said, is that, you know, completely trust Steve, but if we need to pull together another meeting, if there's things we have to take votes on, let's do that. You know, we can open meeting law and posting, but we will get together. I'm gonna ask Steve though, you know, Jen McDonald, we cannot rave enough about her. And I think even all the stuff we're talking about today, the first time a lot of us are hearing about it. And so obviously people in town, you know, not everyone's watching Zoom right now. And so let's figure out a way, as Paul kind of mentioned, to get information out there.
It's hot off the press. This hasn't gone.
Amazing.
Yeah, you guys are hearing about it first.
So I love that, you know, just the questions that we're all getting about parks and what's open and what's closed. And so just to kind of have it and the phases and things like that, because as someone who reads the governor's regulations for my, you know, full-time paid gig, it's not fun to do. And so as much as we can share that. And then the other thing I'm going to say, and it was one of the first things Tom said, is, you know, I keep on trying to find in crisis, there's opportunities for us to, there's opportunities in crisis. And that we have been talking about a greeter at town hall for the last 3 years. And the fact of having a greeter and maybe having, you know, a laptop there and having all the handouts that people need throughout the building, all at the front entrance, is something we've literally been talking about for years. And so if this crisis and pandemic gives us an opportunity to do that and, you know, have it, I know Sherry's also been working on people not having to come down to town hall and, you know, doing more online. And so thank you, Tom, and Steve and Sherry and Ruth for thinking about that stuff. But when you said greeter, I got really excited because I feel like that was my first meeting three years ago now about town hall should be more welcoming. And I think, you know, the library has it, but when we get to the point of the civic center and the senior center also, I just would love to continue that conversation. So thank you.
Jonathan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just very, very briefly, you know, I'm going to echo Councillor Donaco and Councillor Butt's comments around, you know, willingness to pull together kind of an emergency meeting. I think the number of variables in terms of what restaurant reopening might look like and the number of sort of policy decisions we'd have to make in terms of streets, you know, liquor licensing questions, parking regulations. I'm having a hard time thinking through, if we were to vote on something today, what it would be so that it's both broad enough to give Mr. Mayo sort of reasonable latitude, but also narrow enough not to give you unreasonable latitude. And so I just wanted to echo, I think it makes sense for us to come together very quickly in an emergency meeting, you know, when and if we get guidance on what phase 2 looks like, to think about opening streets and so forth.
Sure. I think if I'm wrong, Ed, jump in, but I think we certainly weren't going to have a lot of regulations be changed by the task force without us knowing about it. It was more, okay, go ahead and try to be creative, and then maybe we come back for a quick meeting and vote on anything we need to do. But I would not want them to say we need to check with the council on something basic.
Right.
Exactly. You know, and I trust Steve to not, he's never done anything that he thinks should go before the council.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the other point that I would just make, though, is whatever we do, particularly if it involves looking at liquor licensing, is going to have to come back to us anyway.
100%.
So at that point, anything that we need to change may as well, you know, we're going to have to call an emergency meeting regardless.
Absolutely. Thank you. Steve, did you have anything else to say about the business reopening?
I think I feel, we feel for the businesses. I know a lot of them personally. I talk to a lot of them personally. I continue to try to utilize as many as I can. And we're doing what we can within the guidance that we know. What I think we will do is we will come up with what we think could be a good framework of a plan, kind of knowing the areas, and then bring that back, have that ready to roll out very quickly and get it out to the council. If we have to have an emergency meeting, we might have a meeting earlier in June anyway, and we can move from there. So that's fine. I'm all good. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. I am going to take Chair's prerogative to just invite Tom Markham to super briefly explain what the vote was last night with regard to graduation, because I do think people might be listening and in understanding that the council has nothing to do with this. This is all school committee, but he's here and I know that he can clearly say what Ruth had agreed to and what you voted on. Thank you, Tom.
So thank you, Madam Chair, for the opportunity, and hello to all the counselors. Let me first thank Ruth again in this public environment. She has been incredibly helpful to providing guidance to Doug Lyons and to Amy McLeod, as well as to the graduation, the working group. And this is a difficult time. There's lots of controversy. There's lots of frustration. I'm sure you're all, at least either hearing it directly or certainly indirectly. So we're all certainly trying to do the very best we can for the class of 2020 in a time when it's incredibly difficult to know what to do, never mind what the right thing is. So with that in mind, I wanted to clarify, and with Ruth's guidance tonight, one of the most important things that from the school committee perspective that came out of the guidance that the Board of Health gave to Doug Lyons last night was more about not being able to put 260 kids on the field in June. The approval of the small groups. The small groups, we felt we were very, very comfortable with that as an option in the first place. But what was taking on a bit of a fever pitch, understandably so, was the notion that would it be possible to have some socially distant, compliant behaviors, and at the same time put 260 members of the class of 2020 on the field in June, or really before July 18 as the date. There was some great clarity, at least as I understand it, and this is why I'm sort of kicking it back to Ruth and for the many people that are probably watching tonight's meeting, but seeking clarity to appreciate that the Board of Health was pretty clear in its what I'll call opposition to the graduates on time in the June timeframe. And I think that's a very important point of clarification. Certainly, we appreciate the approval of the small group option, but we were really seeking some strong direction over what we could do with regard to a larger group, socially distanced compliance, and all of that. So I wanted to bring that up to make sure that we understand what the Board of Health actually did, and am I recalling this story sort of is this accurate recollection, Ruth, of the board's action last night?
Sorry, I was trying to minimize dog noise here. Okay, so yeah, as Tom said, I was on their conference call last Friday morning and Tuesday morning, and I'm in pretty much daily contact with Superintendent Lyons over all sorts of different issues, graduation being the latest. So, I gave the plan to the board yesterday, as well as a copy of the state's guidance. And I just talked about the conversations briefly about at the meetings, trying to bring in all the different pieces of information that I could, And then Superintendent Lyons was able to join the meeting and was able to do the same thing. And I'm going to paraphrase the board, which the meeting is recorded, so anybody is certainly welcome to watch it. I think the consensus of the board was that if you go back to the state's regulations, it starts with graduation before July 18th should be virtual. And it starts from there. Then it goes on to say, if you want to do something before July 18th, it must be very restrictive. Blah, 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 with a bunch of other stuff on it. So the board, all three board members, if I remember correctly, articulated that there wasn't any way they could say that 260 students plus their families, if that's +3, that's 1,000 people on the field. There's nobody, it's just not a small group. And they just couldn't see their way clear to say, yeah, that's a small group. Even if it was just the students at 260, they said, well, 260 isn't a small group either. So, so that's basically what they said, that they would not agree to, at least before July 18th, not agree to that plan. All three of them felt like the plan that was presented was a really well thought out plan. They were impressed with the involvement of all the different stakeholders and the thoughtfulness and the fact that the plan had been revised several times to try to address as many people's concerns as possible, but that ultimately it can't be a regular graduation. It just can't. So you kind of have to start from there and figure out how you can address as many of the important issues for everybody as possible. And the board thought that you, the school committee, and the group that had been working on it had really done a great job with that.
Ruth, thank you so much for weighing in. And Tom, thanks for just clarifying that, because I know a lot of our members have received questions as well as folks watching. So thank you so much.
And thank you, Madam Chair and members, for the opportunity to say that. It's important on now. Thanks so much.
Absolutely. Now we'll move to the very brief and boring presentation by Town Moderator Bill Carroll on what's going to happen at the annual town meeting.
I'll take that as direction. Madam Chairman, before I start, I would like to point out that the baseball hats look fabulous, okay? I don't know why you're wearing them, but they look great. Let me just say, as I said last time, and I will reiterate, being a member of the Mass Moderators Association with a daily influx of no less, sometimes 30 and sometimes 50 emails, there is no stone left unturned in terms of my education about what, how, when, why, and the pitfalls of conducting town meeting during this time. I want to thank Tom and Ruth. I consulted with them, as I'm supposed to do, under the legislation. And, you know, they've been great. And we've got a nice open line of communication. We are going to move the meeting from the 8th to the 20th. I will send a letter to the council. And I think I've sent it to the Attorney General's office. Tommy Mullen can correct me on that. We thought about outside, we thought about inside, we thought about everywhere. Outside had its benefits, it has its downfalls. One, where to have it. The playing with the weather would be a real problem, because we would, the uncertainty and the fact that we could get delayed so many times that we'd enter into the 1/12 budget area, which I know would displease the town administrator. So he's conveyed somewhat. So what I think we should do is this. I think we should utilize the field house, okay? Based on the number of people that we get on average, we can set up seating that will be socially distanced correct. I checked with Ruth on this. We'll have them 8 feet apart. There's actually a plan that the North Andover moderator put together, a friend of mine, on how to literally put your chairs out, and you have a certain section based on some statistical idea that, if people come in together, there'll be a section for family members or household members that can sit together. There'll be another section for out-of-town visitors and another section for the regular voters. So what I thought we'd do is this. In the auditorium, there's that sort of little balcony. There's CAT would like to be up there. I've also talked to Ryan Boyd, good guy, by the way, taking over from Tommy Stapleton. And they'll be an important factor in how we do this. And it makes it easier for them to be there. Also with the whole weather thing and their equipment and all that kind of stuff. So I thought I'd put them up there, talk to Betsy this morning about leaving the big doors open at the end. People can come in that way. And he's got a shotgun mic, so nobody has to approach the same mic, and breathe all over it. And pretty much, I've talked to these folks, and it seems to be that would be the best place to do it. The 20th seems to be an optimal time. We do have some sort of lag time in case there's any challenge to anything for signatures and all that stuff, so that it would occur before the end of the fiscal year. Other than that, I mean, all other options have all kinds of problems. We don't have a parking lot where everybody could drive in, and some towns that are small or out west, people drive into a parking lot, you can get an FM band, and they do it that way. We don't have anywhere we could do a parking lot, and who knows, we never know how many people are going to show up. And there is sort of a couple of articles that I think will draw some attention. If everybody shows up, if we convey to them that it is, we've taken all kinds of precautions to make sure that everything will be safe, I think people might show up, something to do, as it were. And so we've got a backup overflow set up like we did that time for the Galvin, I think it was, when we were in the old Galvin. We used the cafeteria, talked to CAT about that. So other than that, I think that's the general overview. At some point, Ruth, Tom, Ryan Boyd, myself, and I guess you, Ann, as the chairperson, we'll do a walkthrough, ahead of time to see if there's some practical concerns that we hadn't thought about. The only thing I thought about, if it rains, are people going to want to line up outside those doors? But if that's the case, I'm sure that Blanchard's could, on a moment's notice, could set something up like a tarp or something if we need to have some sort of protection out there for people to line up or stay in line. We're thinking about starting at 9 o'clock, and the 20th is a Saturday, so we get it done. So we get it done in one day. Other than that, the actual practical aspect of where you walk down what aisle, there's only going to be one mic, the shotgun mic. They're going to test theirs ahead of time to see if it works. If not, they'll rent one. The kind they have on sidelines at a football game, which pick up everything, And other than that, I think, that's pretty much it. I just don't see us. I don't see us doing it outside. We certainly are not going to do it in the auditorium. That's not going to work. So as I said, that's the overview, the practical aspects of it. We'd be here all night. There's a whole plan that you can utilize that's been put together by the Mass Moderators Associations for seating, and lots of other details that I'll give to Steve to pass on to the DPW in terms of the physical plan itself, and then work with Ryan Boyd to see how we have it all set up. I think the only thing we're really concerned about is PowerPoint presentations. But I talked to him late today, and he thinks, well, if we have a screen set up, that might not be as big an issue. You know what I mean? So that's about it.
Thank you, Bill. And something else that we also talked about was if someone legitimately or likely not legitimately shows up without a mask, everyone's going to have to be masked when they come in. There might be some
Clearly,
reasons medically.
they will need a note from their doctor.
They can't. No, that under the law, we can't ask.
We'll have extra masks there for people who show up without masks.
But if someone says I can't for a medical reason, I think there's a way to section off an area for them. I don't think we can keep them out.
Yeah, we can do that.
Yeah.
I'm not wearing one because I don't look good in a mask.
Well, there you go.
I'm kidding.
But those kinds of details will certainly be worked out by the group.
Yeah. I think that, the actual, I'm here to inform. The actual logistics and the implementation of this is Tom, Ruth, and myself, and you as chair walk through and we update you.
Sounds good.
It's going to be once we've moved it and we decide, and we came to this consensus today that that's the place to do it. We've been kind of holding off to see if I'm open to any idea, but outdoors just doesn't make sense. I will tell you, one town had to delay theirs for 3 weeks because of possible allergies and potential bee stings. And they had already rented a lot of chairs.
Yeah.
So we don't want to do that. And a lot of towns don't have the expanse that the field house affords us. Steve, how many square feet is it?
Little over 17,000.
Thank you. I've only asked him that 20 times. I can't remember that.
Thank you. I see a bunch of hands up. I'm gonna start with Tom Mullen and then go to Paul and Jonathan. Tom.
Yeah, Madam Chair, there's one action that I'd appreciate it if the town council would take tonight concerning this.
Sure.
As you heard from the moderator, a report has to be submitted to the Attorney General shortly after he issues his declaration continuing the town meeting. And my reading of Chapter 53 is that report is to come from the public health official designated by the Board of Selectmen. So I suggest that the town council, which is our Board of Selectmen, designate Ruth as the appropriate person to transmit that report. And I'll work with both Bill in terms of drafting his declaration and Ruth in terms of the report that goes to the AG.
Perfect. Thank you, Tom. We'll take that motion at the end of the conversation. Paul Donaco.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Steve, a question for you. We know the square footage. Do we know what the seating capacity potentially could be?
3,000.
Wow.
I mean, not in this instance because they'd be socially distanced, but that was what it would be normally.
Normally. So what would you say? 300, 500?
We'd have to measure that out, but I think it is the largest place we could have. Yeah, I would say in that ballpark.
Hey, Paul, just to clarify, we're not going to use the bleachers.
Yeah.
Oh, I understand that.
Okay, I just want to make sure and we'll have an overflow either in the cafeteria or there's another room, not being a Wakefield High grad, but both Steve and Ryan Boyd have told me there's a room with some good size close by that they'll set up as a satellite, like we did when we did the Galvin article was on that time,
Okay, no, very good. Thank you.
Okay.
Jonathan, did you have your hand up?
I did. Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you, Mr. Moderator, for reporting on the plan and for all the thought that's gone into it. I just had a couple of questions around sort of comment and voting. First of all, I'm assuming for the satellite spaces, individuals who are in those spaces will have the opportunity to comment on the articles and vote, and we'll have a system in place to do that.
Yeah, that's why the cafeteria, I guess, in the high school is kind of a hike.
Yeah.
And that's why when I talked to Ryan, he said there's another room there. And like we if we need to do that, I'll have an assistant moderator. And he would, I remember that time back then, he would call me. I think that was pre-texting or something. And he would alert me that somebody's on their way down. So nobody will be shut out. We may even be able to get somebody set up a system down there, but I don't want to tax those guys with too much. But yeah, no, there's a screen there, and then he counts the vote and sends it down if that happens. Okay.
Okay. Great. And the second question I had is, and maybe this is something to think through. We probably will have some segment of the voting population that physically can't be there for health reasons, if they're positive for COVID-19 and don't want to expose others, if they're immunocompromised in some way. And I would just ask if there's some way that we can think about figuring out how we could accommodate those folks where it wouldn't be safe for them to physically be, at the high school during town meeting. I recognize that, doing this on a broad scale would be probably a prohibitive effort, as we think about between now and June 20th. But I don't know if there's some way to think about, giving people the opportunity to let us know in advance if they're not able to be there again because of health reasons. And if we can figure out some way to accommodate those folks from a participation standpoint, that'd certainly be something that I'd love to see us figure out a solution to.
Yeah, one of the concerns is that if you open up, and I agree with you, if, I know a lot of the representative town meetings have obviously gone to Zoom, and that's easy. The problem then is that it might be like too many people, to tell you the truth, to be real honest. Then how do you verify that you really don't have, you really can't go, and who would then operate that and moderate? Somebody would have to sit there on a Zoom, run a Zoom chat, I imagine, or something like that. So, I'll look into it.
I appreciate it.
You see the two sides, you know what I mean? In other words,
absolutely.
I don't want to go down, so I'm just going to Zoom in, and then it could become, what I didn't preface this was, there's two main themes that have been here is sort of the safety issue and the legitimacy. Okay. Yep. That's become a real issue in some other towns. I'm concerned that if we did that and we opened that up, is there some concern about legitimacy? But you know what? I'll look into that. That's a fair issue to explore.
Thank you. No, I appreciate that. And again, I don't pretend to know that there is a solution or that there is a possibility of a solution before June 20th. I just want to make sure we don't at least give it some. I want to make sure we at least give it some.
Yeah,
some thought
no, I agree with that. Like it's interesting. One of the towns out west, they get like 90 people or 100 people, and they did it by Zoom.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's not going to happen here.
Yep.
And apparently we have a couple of issues. So,
great.
Okay.
I'll
look at that, and I'll let you know, Jonathan.
Thanks, Jonathan. And I see Julie has her hand up.
Yes. And really just listening to this conversation and that possibility, and I've already raised this with Anne, so she's part of the logistics team, but we know Wi-Fi is pretty non-existent there. And so I just want, that needs to go into the planning if there is going to be any kind of try to do communications through at least cell. Maybe there is Wi-Fi that we need to give everything, but there's really very little cell coverage there, and it's been an issue for years, and I just want that to be part of it.
Yeah. Difficult times.
I know.
I mean, you shouldn't be on your phone anyway, Julie, as you know, during the meeting.
Well, but if you're trying to communicate through the cell tower to a room or through Zoom, that's why.
I appreciate that. I'll check with the CAT guys, or we can buy a lot of those boosters and plug them in at all the outlets or something.
I just think, there might be families, parents going back and forth who need to be communicating. I think
I understand.
Sensitive to that.
Or I will say in advance, if you need to step outside to communicate, even to check, feel free and don't feel inhibited and something like that. Oh, I will definitely do that. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. And Anne had conveyed that.
Good.
So
I knew she had, but I wanted to bring it up.
Okay.
Thanks, Julie. Does anyone else have any questions for Mr. Moderator? I don't see any hands up.
Okay, stop calling me that right now.
I'm just trying to be formal in my we lost to Stoneham census.
You forgot who you're talking to here, right?
Yeah. It looks like we're all set. All right, Billy.
Yeah,
Thank
no, seriously, and I really, I am. If anybody has any concerns or issues, just email me or call Steve or something, because there's no, it's all a trial and error basis here. You know what I mean? So I'm not, I'm not. I told Tommy I wouldn't be as pejorative as I normally am tonight, but I really am open to any suggestions or any concerns all the way in, just so we don't. We want to have, we do want to have a safety and B, legitimacy.
Mm-hmm.
So anybody has anything really, just, contact or anything comes up, and we'll try and do that. And then at some point, I don't know when your next meeting is before the meeting, but maybe we'll have a walkthrough that would be done prior to you guys having another meeting. So if there's any concerns or anything, we can really address those at the time. Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
We have to make a motion per Tom's comment. So if someone can make a motion that an order be created by Ruth or sent by Ruth, but Tom will help assist in that motion to alert them of us changing our town meeting date.
So moved.
Moved by Paul, seconded by
Second.
Julie. All in favor of the creation of that motion. Ed Dombrowski.
Aye.
Peter May.
Yes.
Paul Donaco.
Yes.
Julie Galvin, Smith Galvin.
Yes.
Irene Butt.
Yes.
Jonathan Chines.
Yes.
And yes from me. So unanimous on that. Thank you.
Can I just add one thing? Is Tommy in the Himalayas? I just want to know where he is. I mean, he's awfully dressed up to be in that altitude. That's all I want to know.
I usually don't wear a tie when I hike.
I was going to say, but really, that's Lafayette right behind you, I suspect.
I'm on Lafayette. You're looking south down the Franconia Ridge.
Oh, silly me. All right.
All right. Thanks, Bill.
Okay. Thanks. Bye.
Moving on now to our budget updates. We have the town clerk budget and the tax collector budget. Steve.
Yes, I apologize. I should have had this at our last meeting when we talked about the supervisor's contract. Both the town clerk and the treasurer, the town clerk and the tax collector follow the supervisor's contract, although they're not members of the union. So when I make the motion for the union to get their increases that this board approved and that FinCom also is going to have favorable action on, we also need to increase the elected officials' budget, both in the town clerk's budget and in the tax collector's budget. So these salary increases will be noted in the recommendation book, and they were included in the numbers that I gave you overall for that entire package, which actually came in a little bit less than I thought was going to. So I think that I'm very fine if you want to take them in one motion to approve the increase by the tax collector and the town clerk in their budget at the same parameters under the supervisor's contract. Try to make it very easy for you, if you wish.
Do I have a motion on what Steve just indicated? And we had discussed this when we went over the full motions. It's moved by Paul, second by Peter. Any discussion? Okay. Jonathan.
Yes.
Ed Dombrowski.
Aye.
Peter May.
Yes.
Paul Donaco.
Yes.
Julie Smith Galvin.
Yes.
And Irene Butt.
Yes.
And myself, yes. So unanimous on approval of those budgets. Thank you.
Madam Chair, can I make one suggestion? Because Betsy is still on the line, and she may not want to hang on here for the rest of the meeting. But if we could take the item 13, I think that's the election warrant and the setting of the election hours.
Absolutely.
Betsy may want to weigh in on that, or the council may have questions.
Nope, I think that's great. So we're going to move to item 13 right now, and the setting of election hours. Betsy, are you? There you are. Okay.
I am. I'm right here, Annie. I'm suggesting the Elections Division of the Secretary of State's office has notified all of the towns in the Commonwealth that they can have a 4-hour election day. It must begin before noontime. Can you hear me, Annie?
Perfectly. Yep, you're
Okay.
great.
It must begin before noontime. And I suggested the hours of 10 to 2, not too early, you know, so the people are able to get there. Now, there's several facets to this whole thing. But the main thing is that for 43 days, and we now have, I think, 31 days left, there's early voting and absentee voting available without having to put a reason down. And we're getting them in constantly. So there is the option to people. As I said to Jonathan Chines this morning, and Jonathan, I apologize for calling you at 25 minutes of 7. But
No worries. My kids were already up.
there you go. We're never going to please everybody. There's always going to be somebody complaining about it. But I've spoken with the other town clerks, and much like the moderator does, he's in constant contact with other moderators. I'm in constant contact with other town clerks. And it's worked in the 2 communities that I spoke with today. It's worked out well. And there's so many considerations and facets. Distancing, because I have to go by what's acceptable right now. The voting booths being 6 feet apart. The people that will be waiting to come in and vote in person being socially distant. So there's so much involved in there. Also, poll workers, which is coming up also on your agenda. And I'll speak to that too, Steve, if you wish at this time. But my recommendation to Steve, and I've played the devil's advocate, I've had him play the devil's advocate with me, is to have the polling hours at the Galvin from 10 in the morning on the 23rd until 2 in the afternoon. Mark O'Malley from IT and I can go down there, get everything set up, and it'll go very well, trust me, it really will. So what more do you want from me, Steve?
Nothing.
Good.
And Betsy, have we been pushing out on social media and Steve with Jen, the early voting?
Here's the deal. I have been doing it on Facebook with the most ridiculous poems that I've ever written in my life, all right? But just to get somebody's attention, I've had a race amongst the 7 precincts, all right? And I wanted to wait until after your meeting tonight, Ann,
yeah,
so that I've got an email all set to go right to the item, right to Jen, right into Facebook, but I didn't want to preempt your meeting out of respect to the council, quite honestly.
No.
I've had it ready for some time.
Perfect. That sounds great, Betsy.
We're going to sell it. I'm going to try to sell this the best way that I can.
Thank you.
Mhm.
I see Julie Smith-Galvin has her hand up for a question.
And Betsy, thank you so much. And I appreciate that you didn't want to get ahead of us on that. I would just also ask that we do a red alert on this. I think it's an important enough issue that I would like to see a red alert on it if possible. And that the signage go up, you know, our blinking signs that we have and go up as soon as possible. That will just get people, I mean, people have kind of forgotten about it. And as I talk to people, they get right on it. But I agree with you that we definitely need to do more.
Well, Julie, just to answer your question, I have an option of doing 3 out of 4 things to notify the public. There's going to be the red alert. There's no question.
Excellent.
But like everything in life, timing is everything. No one cares about that right now.
No.
They don't. No one cares about that election. I'm telling you the God's truth.
Well, except we need them to have time to.
They're going to have time to do it, Julie. But
get the application in.
The red alert will come. And then the other thing is into the paper of record, which is the item. And the other thing is on social media. The 4th thing I have rejected because it's much too expensive. We've done it before. We had to do it before. And it was not worth it. These 3 things will get to them. The red alert, everything in the newspaper. Now the flashing thing I always do. So I'll have to take the one from Do Not Enter down at Common Street, which is a challenge every morning when I go to work. But yeah, I'll cover all of those. I have a whole plan ready to go.
Thank you so much. I have no doubt. Thank you.
Okay, honey.
If I can jump in, we're also going to do a red alert on town meeting.
Great.
To let people know it's a big different location.
Thank you. Very good idea.
And I see Maureen has her hand raised.
Thanks, Anne. Thank you, Betsy. Can I just ask you a question that I should know the answer to? But if I've requested an absentee ballot, I will get that in the mail.
Yes.
If I don't return it, can I go on the 23rd and vote?
Well, you'll have a little bit of a problem, and I'm going to tell you why. Because before you get your ballot, now we got yours the other day. We clocked it in. It's on its merry way. All right. They're coming in very, very quickly. I print them out here at home and bring them in just to keep up with it. If you came down, it's already going to be marked that you have a ballot. All right. On the paper sheets that we have. All right. Now, I would have to then call the office that day and just say Maureen Butt is not going to have an absentee ballot. She's here in person. And it would involve some work on the state computer. I can't use a state computer at the Galvin. It's not set up for that. We just can't do it. So you wouldn't be able to just walk in because I'd stop you right then and there.
Yep.
And I'd have to go back and see if we had it, you know, and
so yep, that answers my question. So we are encouraging everyone to request to vote by mail, put in the request, drop it off, fax it to you, scan it and email it to you.
Right.
When they get the ballot, then drop off, mail back the ballot. And that is what we are all telling everyone to do.
And that's what I was going to request of you people. Get to your friends, get to your Facebook friends, get to anybody that has a pulse. And the more we get in, it's going to be so much easier for the people that choose to come down to the Galvin on that day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't see any other questions on this point. Do we need a motion to set the election hours?
I think you need that and the
Yes.
approval of the warrant. Need them both.
Oh, right.
Certainly. Okay. So could someone please move to set the election hours to June 23rd, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m.? No?
Is that the date, the 23rd? Yes, okay,
Yes.
23rd, yeah.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Peter, second by Maureen. Jonathan, I'm sorry, any discussion on those? Nope. Okay, taking the vote. Jonathan?
Yes.
Ed Dombrowski?
I'm gonna actually abstain because I'm on the ballot.
Okay. We're good though, right? Yeah, we're good. Peter?
Yes.
Julie Smith Galvin?
Yes.
Maureen?
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
And yes for me. So what is that? 6
And one,
yeses, 1 abstention. And then the warrant, if we can move to just set the election warrant.
So moved.
Moved by Paul,
Second.
second by Jonathan. Any discussion? Okay, Jonathan,
Yes.
Ed,
Again, I'll abstain.
okay. Peter,
Yes.
nay. Julie,
Yes.
Maureen,
Yes.
that was a yes. Paul,
Yes.
and yes for myself. So 6 yes, 1 abstention. Thank you, Betsy, on that. And while we have you here, let's just move quickly to 12B, election of town meeting workers.
Yes. And the state has certain times when they want town meeting, excuse me, I beg your pardon, town election poll workers appointed. It's taken me quite some time to get into the right swing of it. There are some that were appointed by the board, excuse me, by the council through 2023. There were some that were only approved through 2020. I would request that you take the ones that were appointed through 2020, extend them through 2023, and we will be 100% perfectly on track and in line with the state guidelines. And Sherry has that list, I know.
Okay. And Sherry, is that the list that you gave us, or?
No, that is
No.
not. So we did advertise for election workers because, as Betsy said, the first group that we appointed back on November 26th of 18 for a term period of January 2019 through June 30th, 2020. That first group, their terms ended June 30th, 2020. So we advertised. what's in your packet are the ones that applied for the applications. And that group, we're going to do a 3-year term to bring them through 2023. The second group that was appointed, you guys just appointed January 13th, 2020. And that second group of people we already gave them a 3-year term through 2023. So this first group, the ones that were up for 2020, we advertised, we got in the applications, those are in your packet. So it did not include everybody that has expired, but a bunch of them did apply, so.
Thank you, Sherry.
Okay.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So the motion would be for the slate that we were provided to. Could we please have a motion that they be appointed town election and town meeting workers for their term to run through 2023? Sound good, Betsy?
Perfect, honey. Perfect.
All right. Moved by, I think, Paul Donaco, second.
Second.
Second by Jonathan. Any discussion on that? All righty, Jonathan.
Yes.
Ed Dombrowski.
Aye.
Peter May.
Yes.
Julie Smith Galvin.
Yes.
Maureen Butt.
Yes.
Paul Donaco.
Yes.
And myself, yes. So unanimous approval of those workers. Thank you, Betsy.
Thank you, Annie. Just before I take off, and this is going to cover several things, there are people that are very concerned about being sworn in to various and sundry committees or subcommittees that they happen to be members. Okay. And here's the deal. Have them call the office first.
Yeah.
And then we will arrange a time to go out to my satellite office, also known as the parking lot of Town Hall. And that's where they'll be sworn in and they can sign the paperwork there. I know some are more anxious than others, but that's what I've been doing. And if anyone asks any of you, just tell them to call up. We're accommodating everybody. Trust me, we really are. So,
all right.
And I thank everybody tonight for your support. It was kind of nice to be on this gig again.
Ann.
I miss you very much.
I almost voted on something.
Jerry, did you have a question?
And yeah, no, I just want to clarify too what Betsy said. When you guys did appoint everybody to those committees, the letters did go out to all the applicants, and in the letter it stated that they would get sworn in once Town Hall reopened to the public. So that was in their letter.
Okay. Some are a little bit more anxious.
Apparently. Apparently.
It is what it is.
Thank you, Sherry. All right, Betsy, miss you up here.
I miss you too. Everyone looks great. Nice to see you all.
You as well.
On that happy note, I'll see you later.
Okay.
I'm out of here.
So, Steve, I might have lost track since we were jumping.
You're back to item 10.
Right. No, item 10. Yes. So the Economic Development Council. I am going to give that to Ed, as that was what he had thought about.
Thank you, Madam Chair, on that. This will be the third meeting that this has come up, the first being back in April. And at the last meeting, there had been some indication of this body that they were looking for an opportunity to further review the write-up and then offer any sort of feedback. I heard from one counselor, Counselor Chines. I read his email this yesterday morning, and I reached out to all counselors and had conversations with several of you. I understand that I have not heard anyone that I've spoken with say that they're not in support of this. In fact, to the contrary, I think everyone that I have spoken to has said that they are in support of this. There seems to be a bit of a question about timing relative to when this happens. I know that certain members of this body believe that we should wait until after town meeting to make this appointment. I am not clear on why that delay should occur. This is going to be a council that I think we anticipate will be in place for some time. Recruitment is going to take some time. And there's a real benefit to our businesses. Madam Chair, you had mentioned early on about the COVID-19 updates being some of the most important. Well, some of the most important COVID-19 updates that we have now are in relation to our businesses. And I don't think any of us can predict how long of an impact this pandemic will have on our businesses, but I think it's safe to say that we're not talking a matter of weeks or months, potentially. And so I think the sooner we can get something up and running, the better off it's going to be for our businesses. Again, this is not COVID-19 specific by any means, but it is an opportunity for us to be able to build a really robust council of folks from different disciplines. There had been some questions about, or I should say concern about the level of autonomy that this group would have. And I know Vice Chair Smith-Galvin, had pointed out some experiences that she had seen recently, and I agree with her that making sure that this body has a good amount of autonomy is going to be important. I know that Councillor Chines had raised some questions about the composition and the slotting of the nine positions, which I think is a very reasonable point. The description is deliberately broad to see who we attract, and ultimately we are the appointing authority. And so after we advertise and get the word out and then get applicants in, we'll have a better sense of who we have to choose from. Hopefully we have a lot of people to choose from and from many different disciplines. So I think that that is something that, again, is going to take some time for us. And I know there's been a lot of discussion about the Economic Development Director. I'll again say that my understanding from this body is that we are unanimous in our support of that role, of that position. The question before us now is one of timing, when it's appropriate to have that funded and that person hired. And I think Mr. Mayo made some compelling arguments last time, but nonetheless, that's in most ways a separate issue, because this is not in place of an economic development director. This is a complement to an economic development director. I know that in speaking with Mr. Mayo about this kind of a structure is something that we've seen. The Urban Land Institute, for example, an entity that we often will cite and is doing great work, has something similar in place where it's a compilation of some of the best and brightest. Here, we can really have a compilation of the best and brightest from our Wakefield community. And so I would ask this council to now move forward with this. Again, I think there's been sufficient time for folks to be able to review the description and offer comments on it. I would suggest to you, Madam Chair, that rather than have town councilors sitting on the council, perhaps a liaison, as we've done in a number of other capacities, would make sense. I don't think that from what I've researched, it doesn't seem like having slots defined as this is to be someone, a property owner, this is to be someone in banking, this is to be someone in business development, is necessarily the right approach. I think that's overly prescriptive, and I think we need to see what sort of talent pool we attract and then work from there. And I think that'll be a nice problem for us to have. But I would encourage my fellow councilors to seek to have this in motion, because again, it will be a process to get us to a point where it'll be up and running. I've already spoken with Madam Chair and Mr. Mayo about I'll call it the oversight initially, and Mr. Mayo has already agreed and is encouraged by the opportunity that this presents to be able to at least get this body off and running. And then ultimately, I would hope that to Vice Chair Smith-Galvin's point, there is more autonomy with this group going forward, because we're talking about professionals that I want to be sure we're using their time wisely. I know that that's the sentiment that I've heard from most of this body, those that did connect with me on it. So with that, Madam Chair, that's really where things stand at this point. I'm not clear on what the rationale would be to wait until the economic development director position is determined at town meeting, because again, this is not in place of that. This is a complement to that role.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Ed. I see Jonathan's hand raised and then Paul's. I'll take Jonathan first.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Councillor Dombrowski, for walking through the proposal. I first of all just want to start by saying, I am not opposed to putting together an economic development council. I think that there's a lot of value in doing that. And I think if we structure it in the right way, I think that there's a lot of benefit to the community. I did share, and I want to maybe sort of re-articulate some of the concerns that I had shared with Councillor Dombrowski, just for the benefit of the group to hear as well. I do think there's still some areas where I'd like to see us sort of sharpen our pencils a little bit and think about how the committee is structured and what its charge is. And I think the concerns that I would raise are sort of the areas where I would want us to give a little bit more thought to really sit in sort of three buckets. I think the first is sort of having some more clarity on the charter of this council, sort of what's the mission of the council. And when I say that, I don't want to sort of predetermine their outcome or limit their autonomy to determine sort of how they get there. But I think anytime you bring a group of volunteers together, you've got to give them some sort of direction around what it is that, that we'd be looking for them to achieve. I think for me, there are probably sort of three areas that are sort of most important. Again, not prescribing what they would do in these areas, but, three areas where I'd want to see them focusing. One is as a mentoring network for potential new businesses coming into town. It's not easy to open a business in Wakefield. We've heard from a number of people, and I think having a group of individuals that can help with that sort of hand-holding and say, here's how it worked when I went through, and here's who you talk to about either working through this with the town, or here's some opportunities to network with other businesses that may be able to help you with some of the services you need to provide. I think a second part of their mission should be identifying and targeting new business segments that we might want to try to attract to Wakefield, either because they're emerging markets or because there are gaps in our economic fabric in the community right now that we have the benefit to fill. Again, not prescribing how we would do that or how we would prioritize that, but thinking about that as sort of a bucket of opportunity. And then again, the third would be providing policy recommendations to the town council around what are ways that we could improve the business climate in Wakefield. Are there specific regulatory hurdles? Are there licensing hurdles? Things like that that maybe we could address. Again, the goal in saying, I think we need to be a little bit more prescriptive in the mission is to not be prescriptive in the goals. I think, Councillor Dombrowski, to the point you raised about making sure that we're giving, the incredibly accomplished and thoughtful people that I hope we'd attract to this council, giving them the autonomy to sort of chart their own course is very important. But again, I think we've got to do that within sort of a bucket so that there's, kind of clarity and purpose in terms of what they're trying to achieve. So that's sort of one area where I think it would behoove us to put some more thought into some of the specifics. I think the second area is around the structure of the council. And, one concern that I have about sort of putting something generic out there without sort of, having some more clarity on what it is that we're looking for and the types of experiences that we want people to have, is that a number of folks that we may want to see apply to a body like this wouldn't think that they're that they're appropriate for it. So for example, a couple of weeks ago at our meeting, we talked about childcare as a barrier for economic development in Wakefield. Well, reading the description that we have, thinking about that sort of labor market perspective, childcare barriers, transit barriers, things like that, it isn't apparently obvious that that's sort of a skill set that we're looking for, even though it might be able to add some value. And so I do think it would be, again, it would behoove us to take some time to sort of think through that as well. I think the third piece that's important to put some thought to is the staffing of this. For a group of volunteers to be effective, particularly if we want it to be effective in a way where we're supporting policy decisions or looking at changes in the way the town does business in certain ways, it does need to be staffed. And while I appreciate Mr. Mayo's willingness to step in, I think the wisdom of maybe seeing where we go with the timing and funding of the economic development director position is that it allows us to kind of come up with a staffing plan for this up front, which may also then determine the types of people we seek for this council, how we would look to sort of set out the framework of their responsibilities up front, how we would even go about recruiting for it, and whether, whether we would think about changing the timing of that. So I think for all of those reasons, what I would like to propose, and I actually would like to make a motion to this effect, is that we table a vote on this in the hopes that we use today and possibly our next meeting to have some further discussion, to take the really well thought out proposal, Councillor Dombrowski, that you put together, and maybe spend some time sort of tweaking that either with a small group of councillors or sort of individually, and maybe come back at a time, either our next meeting or depending on when we meet relative to town meeting, where we're able to really put something together that I think is ready for flight. So thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate the time.
Thank you, Jonathan. Ed, I'm wondering if, I'll toss it back to you, and I know Paul has his hand up. I know that there's several counselors who support the idea of this position, perhaps not tonight. So as opposed to getting into a discussion of whether this council should even exist, which I don't think we need to get into tonight. I would put it back in your hands, because I like the idea of this council. I like a lot of what you said. I like some of Jonathan's points. I don't agree with all of them. So maybe a smaller group of us, like when Paul and I worked on the economic development position, when we helped her write that, maybe that makes it, an easier vote for us to take in the next meeting or so. But I'd leave that up to you, Ed. I feel very strongly about anyone can bring anything to the table and advocate for their point.
I think, Madam Chair, just one thing that I wanted to be clear on is, again, this is why I originally raised this back in April. I raised this in Chairman's comments, the first meeting that this was raised, in the hopes of having anyone who had interest reach out to me, and I received no response. And then back at our May 11th meeting, there was a tabling of this because the expectation was that people wanted to be engaged in perhaps reviewing and perhaps editing the summary and the scope. And I only received from Councillor Chines, like I said, I received the email yesterday morning, and the points that he made, and I think that they're very reasonable points. And I will say that a couple of things that you had mentioned, Councillor Chines, in fact, identifying new trends, that's in there. It's talking about emerging markets, policy recommendations and impediments, that's in there already. So those things are in there, and I respect what you're saying on that. That's and that's why they were included. The description is really one that was a compilation of having pulled from all different communities across the country that have very similar economic development councils in place. And I actually would venture to say that most of them probably have economic development directors as well, because this is not in place of an economic development director. My concern is that back on the 11th, I had heard, we need more time to review and discuss. And now I'm hearing we need more time to review and discuss. But from the 11th through the 28th, I heard almost nothing from anyone. And again, I made it a point to reach out to every single person. And I did have a really good discussion with you, Madam Chair. I had a really good discussion with you, Vice Chair Smith-Galvin. I had a very good discussion with you, Councillor Chines. I reached out to Councillor Butt and to Councillor Donaco as well. And I have had communications with Councillor May on this for some time now. So, I kind of am like, I'm concerned about our businesses. I want to help our businesses. I think this is a time where we need to be helping our businesses. And again, this isn't something that's going to happen overnight, but at some point we have to get the ball rolling. And I agree, Councillor Chines, we do want to make sure that we're able to take flight, but we also have to at some point leave the terminal. And the way that it's described is deliberately broad. And the stakeholders that are mentioned are deliberately broad in nature because we need to see what direction we go in. I know in speaking with Vice Chair Smith-Galvin, the idea of not being so prescriptive in terms of what we expect the goals of this group to be, but instead to give them a lot of direction in terms of creating, really wide parameters, and let them, be able to kind of amongst themselves, kind of help determine and formulate the policy you're talking about, Councilor Chines, and be thinking through, are there a few priorities that they really want to make sure are their key priorities over the next year? Where's that focus lie? That's going to be driven probably a lot by their communications with our business community, by their own experiences in their own capacities, again, diverse, various capacities. It circles in the nonprofit piece, which I think is something that has been raised here previously. So I think we're at a point where we should really give some serious thought to, is it necessary to further flesh this out, or at least get out, the next step would really be just to promote this out to try to get people to be applying. And I think we run the risk of causing needless delays for this at a time when our business community really needs it the most, because nothing that Councilor Chines has said just now, I necessarily disagree with, but I think a lot of that is captured in this, and it's deliberately broad, because this council could go in a lot of different directions depending on where our business community needs are in 6 months, in 12 months, in 3 years. So that's where my hesitation lies. So I think everyone just needs to be mindful of that. If we talk about tabling it and just bringing it back next time, are we going to do anything different between now and next time? Because we've had 17 days, and I can tell you, the limited contact that I've had from folks.
So Ed, all great points, and I agree. Sometimes we wait for comments to come to us, and when they don't come, we assume people aren't engaged, and then it's important for us to reach out and give and take. But that said, I think if the tabling motion, and I'm going to go back to Jonathan because he kind of sounded like he made it, but I'm not quite sure that it was made.
I did make the motion, Madam Chair.
But I don't think we had a second or a vote or a discussion on that. On that, if it is tabled, I think it's incumbent upon every one of us who has concerns to get to explain what those concerns are in a small group, one-on-one with Ed. And so we really do have a significant conversation the next time this comes up, because I feel his frustration that it's been tabled a few times. I also appreciate that folks want to see what happens with the Economic Development Director.
Madam Chairman, point of order, please.
We're going to the tabling motion. Yeah.
Okay, so we didn't have a section on the tabling motion.
So I assume someone will second that.
I would like to have the opportunity to speak, Madam Chair. I don't want to be ignored and have a motion. I would actually ask Mr. Chines to withdraw his motion for the time being so that I can speak. I would like my due time as a council member for over 10 years to be able to speak to this matter. Oh. I don't want to be ignored.
Paul, you're not being ignored. We're talking about...
I'm asking that Mr. Chines, please.
Madam Chair, I'm happy to withdraw my motion so that Councilor Donaco has an opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Jonathan. Paul, talk.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to express frustration, so bear with me because this may take time. I've been promoting economic development now for the entire length of my term. Ann and I and Steve talked about an economic development director replacing Paul Revis for over a year. I talked to Mr. Mayo about it for even longer. Now, all of a sudden, in the minutes reflecting, Ed's been researching, putting on a council for an elaborate amount of time. So what happened to his support of the council's vote to put on the economic development director? I think the cart has moved before the horse. The horse being the economic development director. We 4-3 voted to appropriate the money for it. It went to the FinCom and they said, no, they don't think it should be forwarded. We haven't even been to town meeting yet. I wouldn't want any action taken on this other than a no vote until after the town meeting. That's my honest opinion. I did my own research. There is no community that abuts Wakefield that has an economic development council that's been in effect for longer than maybe 6 months. But there are 9 communities in close proximity that have economic development directors, okay? And they all have been doing great with them. You have Franklin, Salem, Reading, Gloucester, Attleboro, Lexington, Lawrence, Bedford. They all have economic development directors. I did my research when I first started talking to Steve. Steve was all in favor of it, but he didn't want to put it on too soon because he wanted to wait for Mr. Revis to retire. We actually had this job with a description and it went out for bid for interest. We had people respond to it. Okay, it's not that there wasn't any interest in it. All of a sudden we felt that it wasn't the right time to put this on. I think we're going backwards, and I'm taking this as a slap in the face personally, because I put a lot of time and effort into this. And now because Mr. Dombrowski wants a council and he's been working diligently to put it on, we're all supposed to go with his wishes? No, I don't agree. I adamantly oppose. I will vote no on the council till the cows come home if this is a rush vote now. I really do. I want to see what happens at town meeting and whether or not there is a motion to put the money back into the council, into the director's position. If that occurs and it passes, let the new director do his job and form an economic development council. That's the way it's done. You don't form a council first. So I disagree with Ed, and before he has the floor again and speaks for another 20 minutes, I want to finish my say. He's already had his, okay? We cannot keep making people work on things and then have it go nowhere. I feel that the carrot was dangled in front of my face for the last 2 years, and it was then taken away and a new idea came. Who's going to be running this? Steve shouldn't be running this. He already has a ton of things to do. I would be opposed to Stephen running this. He's got the COVID to worry about, finances to worry about. This is the job that Paul Revis had. Why aren't we supporting that position being filled again? I just don't get it. We modified it to become an economic development director because we had to bring business in to the picture. That wasn't Paul's forte. We all know it wasn't. But for the longest time, he was the go-to person for businesses coming into this town if they needed information. You're eliminating him now. Who's going to be that point person? Victor Santaniello? No, that's not the person that should be giving out information to that people. Okay, having them go upstairs and talk to Steve. Steve's busy doing finances, and that's what he's good at. He's the aces in finances. I believe strongly that we would be making the biggest mistake by putting on an economic development council before finding out what we're doing with the economic development director. The director has to come first, not the council. Everyone that I've talked to, every director I talked to has always said they are the crux of putting great minds together in order to see how their community grows forward. And then they present that to the governing body, not the other way around. I don't feel comfortable having a council establish itself and then maybe hire someone in November, because there's no guarantees it's going to get hired in December. So November. I really, really think that we should hold off on this personally. And I'm going to refrain from putting a motion out there as far as that's concerned, but I would vote no if this was to proceed right now. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Paul. Wow. I disagree with a lot of what you said, especially about the personal affronts, but I appreciate you weighing in. Ed.
So I will say with that, based upon what I'm hearing, I do just want to clarify that the fact that no other surrounding community has an economic development council, I think just further underscores the uniqueness of Wakefield being able to do it. And I know that we've talked in the past about how we can set ourselves apart from other communities. And so I went outside the 128 belt and looked at a lot of communities again across the country to see what a lot of other places were doing and tried to pick up their best practices. that all being said, Councilor Donaco, I did reach out to you and I never heard back from you.
Reached out to me Thursday, sir. And I've had a little bit of business here with my brother-in-law. So you come secondary, not to my family.
Okay, let's you know, we civility is a huge part of how I want this council to run. So let's please be kind and respectful to each other. We've had that for a long time. Let's continue it, please. Ed, did you have a motion?
So I do. So I would venture then, Madam Chair, that it might make the most sense if you were to perhaps identify like yourself and someone else, or however you want to do it in your discretion. I'd like to be able to work with a couple counselors on this. Again, we could do 3, I think, obviously without any issues. And then maybe bring it back to the next meeting with that. As long as we have a shared understanding here that it would be helpful to move this forward. I do think, we're helping business by moving this forward. With that, I would ask that this body entertain a motion for the tabling of this with Madam Chair to appoint someone else or 2 other people to collaborate on this, with the expectation we bring it back to the next meeting. I think it's June 22nd, if that pleases this body.
Sure. Do we have a second on that?
Second.
Any discussion on the tabling that hasn't been said?
Madam Chair, just if I could just say briefly, just on the timing piece, I think part of my original motion to table it, I think, was predicated on the fact that there was some feedback that was shared at the May 11th meeting.
Yeah.
That I think certainly my expectation was that would be reflected in a revised version of the proposal that we reviewed today. And so, again, my discussion today, and again, with all appreciation of the work that's gone into this, is not to unnecessarily delay this. I just think there's more work that needs to be done, and really am interested in making sure that we do it correctly. So I appreciate, Councilor Dombrowski, your willingness to kind of get a group together to think through this. I think that's the right approach, and I think that will ultimately lead to a better product.
I want it to work for the town. I want this to work for our town and for our businesses. So however we need to get there, we'll get there. And I appreciate, Madam Chair, you're working with me on this to get us there.
All right, so this is a vote for the tabling. Jonathan?
Yes.
Ed?
Aye.
Paul?
No.
Peter May?
Yes.
Maureen?
Yes.
Julie?
Yes.
Excellent. So this is will be tabled to our next meeting. The vote was 6-1. Thank you. All right, moving to item 11, licenses and approvals. We have a farmer's market liquor license, an application from Aranap Sellers to sell wine at the farmer's market. I need a motion for that.
Moved.
Moved by Julie Smith-Galvin, seconded by Maureen. Any discussion? Okay, hearing none. Jonathan?
Yes.
Ed?
Aye.
Paul?
Yes.
Peter May?
Yes.
Maureen?
Yes.
And Julie?
Yes.
And yes for myself. Excellent. 11B is the pride flag, the raising of the pride flag on June 1st. We had voted, unanimously had voted to ratify this on this meeting. We couldn't vote because of posting limitations at our last meeting. So I just simply need a motion to ratify the previous vote taken to raise the pride flag in front of the American Civic Center for the month of June. We took that vote on May 11th.
So moved.
Moved by Paul.
Second.
Second by Peter. Jonathan?
Yes.
Discussion. I'm sorry. Any discussion? No. Okay. Jonathan?
Yes.
Ed?
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
Peter?
Yes.
Maureen?
Yes.
Julie?
Yes.
And myself, yes. So that is official. That will be raised. We'll speak with HRC about the logistics and with Steve Mayo to make sure that it's raised in a socially distant, responsible manner, and still, reflect the values we have on this issue. So excellent. Thank you. Appointments. We have 12A, the high school building committee, the MSBA building committee. We have we had a bunch of applicants, which is so exciting to see. I would propose, and certainly can take discussion on this, that we appoint the slate. There's quite a number that have applied to be a part of this group, but I'm a feeling of the more the merrier. This group will be somewhat different than the permanent building committee when we really get going on the new high school. We had a group like this for the Galvin, and they provided tremendous guidance and input to the other committee. This committee can be broken down into subcommittees. They can have a focus. So I know that it is a large committee, but I would hate to turn anyone away, because I think this is a 4-year commitment at least, and people might drop in and out. So I would suggest appointing the slate that we have before us.
Do you have a term, Madam Chair? With
Steve,
terms, dates to be, it says with term dates to be discussed.
Right.
You have term?
I don't have a term right now. Steve, do we need a term statutorily?
Normally, people that are appointed to this committee are appointed for the committee, for the committee till it expires. Might be 3 years, might be 4 years. We will find over time, unfortunately, that people will move off. They'll move off, they'll move on. On the Galvin School, and I hope this doesn't happen here, I went through 4 superintendents and had to change the committee every time. So I think you just point to the committee, to the duration of this committee, and like the chair said last time, it is a group. It is a the more the merrier, and there will be very specific items given to people. You have people that are HVAC people, that are architects, that are engineers, that are project planners, and I think that this, in concert with the other townspeople and the school committee, added a couple of people on their end, will be great. And the more the merrier, and the more that promote the project as we go forward. So I would agree with the chair's recommendation to appoint the slate.
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion to move the slate.
Sure, we have some discussion I see already.
Okay.
Ed.
I just wanted to mention that anyone who may not have looked at all of the applicants, I think it's 12 in total, incredibly impressive resumes. Really so incredibly impressive. And I think it's a real testament to the kind of bench we have in town. So I just wanted to make sure everyone watching at home knows that we're appointing a really, really solid slate of people who I think are going to make some great work out of it.
I agree.
Thank you.
Maureen.
Yeah, to echo what was said, there's great candidates in here, and thank you everyone who is offering to volunteer and serve. Madam Chair, I just wanted to ask, did we, I know on some of the set positions there's a town council liaison. Have you appointed that person yet, or?
So Maureen, great question. Not to this committee, but I believe that there will be a town councilor appointed to the larger committee. There's a slot for that.
No, it'd be on this committee.
Oh, it's on this committee.
This committee, yes. This is the same committee.
Same committee, but we. So no, I haven't appointed, but I know that Jonathan Chines has tremendous interest and he's worked with the schools. So my recommendation would be to appoint Jonathan to that, but that wasn't on the. That wasn't on the.
Oh no, that wasn't on the.
So, no, and I was just asking because I don't know when we do that in the process, because I think us in school committee we get to appoint.
That's right.
And so I would second that. I think Jonathan's been the school liaison, and with 4 kids in the public school system, I think he beats all of us about caring about it. But I didn't know if we needed to vote on that, Steve and Tom, or just.
I don't think so, but doesn't hurt.
I think that certainly no issue with the council voting on it.
So any more discussion on we could vote for the slate and to have Jonathan be our representative on this committee?
Madam Chair, just on the motion to move the slate, I don't think that was seconded, so I add my second to that.
You're right. Jonathan, did you second that?
Yes.
Do you accept the appointment?
Yes.
Excellent. Okay. So seeing no one with their hands up, and we've had our discussion. Jonathan?
Yes.
Vote. Ed?
Aye.
Paul,
Yes.
Peter,
Yes.
Maureen,
Yes.
Julie,
Yes.
and myself, yes. So congratulations to all those appointed. Your resumes were fabulous. We look forward to working with you. And Jonathan, we know you'll continue on the good work. And then we have, this is exciting, our Youth Council middle school members. So we are appointing, I think also the slate. Is that correct, Sherry? We're able to appoint the slate?
You can do that if you want. I know last meeting with the high school age ones, we took them all, but some of them were just the associate members, so they didn't have the voting. And you could do it this way too if you want to do.
I mean, these are the middle school kids. I would have no problem moving the slate to appoint them to the youth council. And
so there's 3 voting spots. I don't know if you want to designate who gets the 3 and then the rest get the associate.
can we, as we did last time, do you know in time when they came in?
Yes. So the order that they came in is how it is in your packet and online. So that's the correct order. Yeah.
Okay. So similarly that we did to the high school, I would suggest that we appoint the first 3 students that got their information in as voting members, and the other applicants to certainly be very involved associate members to this committee.
So moved.
Moved by Ed?
Yes.
Second.
Seconded by Paul. And I don't have the names in front of me of those, Sherry, but you can take care of that.
Yes. Yep. So all the appointments tonight, even the school building committee, the election workers, and the middle school ones, I will do everybody will get a letter, an appointment letter, notifying exactly what they got to do, their terms and everything. So they'll be all set. Within a few days, I'll get those out.
That's great. I see Maureen has a hand up.
Thanks, Ann. I just want to say for this committee in particular, I reached out, I just asked Catherine Dingra, who's the advisor, just her thoughts. I think it's good practice when we can just to kind of ask. And she was okay with us doing she actually said to get 1 from each grade if we could. And the way that they were submitted, we got a 6th, 7th, and 8th grader, and the other 2 will be alternatives. So I just wanted to add that I think, as the person who's going to be leading that, it was nice just to have her weigh in on the candidates.
Perfect. Thank you, Maureen. That's a great point.
Yeah.
Okay, now we'll take the vote. As stated, we didn't vote yet. No. Jonathan?
Yes.
Ed?
Aye.
Paul?
Yes.
Peter?
Yes.
Maureen?
Yes.
Julie?
Yep.
And myself, yes. So thank you. And thanks for clarifying that, Sherry.
Sure.
Okay. We've already handled item 13. We're hitting on item 14, which is setting of the public hearing, June 22nd at 7:05 for the setting of the water and sewer rates. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Ed. Any discussion?
Second.
Second by Jonathan. Thank you. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none. Let me just make sure this last chat isn't any. No, we're good. Okay, Jonathan.
Yes.
Ed.
Aye.
Paul.
Yes.
Peter.
Yes.
Maureen.
Yes.
Julie.
Yes.
Excellent. And myself, yes. So unanimously setting that date for water and sewer rates. Okay. Now we are down to item 15, announcements, acknowledgements, and any issues that counselors want to raise.
Oh, I'll jump in.
Jonathan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So a couple of things I did want to raise. First and foremost, we talked a little bit about the high school graduation, but certainly we've got a lot of achievements to celebrate for our graduates. And so I know, thanks to Counselor Butt, some of us have wonderful signs as congratulations to the class of 2020. Really want to, send our appreciation, our congratulations to everyone who's graduating from Wakefield Memorial High School this year. As always, it's an incredibly impressive group of students. They've done amazing work this year, particularly as they've ended their senior year in really trying circumstances. And I know that, you know, everyone on the council speaks on behalf of everyone in the town and saying just how amazed and impressed we are with you and how we wish you the very, very best of luck with whatever's next after graduation this year. So congratulations, class of 2020. I would also be remiss in doing that if I didn't also express our congratulations for the incoming high school freshman class, the class of 2024, who will be moving on from the Galvin this year. Congratulations to that group as well. And also to the class of 2028, our fourth graders who will be moving on from elementary school to the Galvin, including one who I know very, very well, who happens to live in my house. So again, we're really proud of everyone in town and best of luck to everyone. Just the second thing I wanted to mention is as we are approaching the end of the school year, one event that is happening virtually, not live, but virtually, is the Megan Burnett Memorial Concert, which will be tomorrow night on Facebook Live from 6 to 7 o'clock, put on by the high school's Tri-M Music Honor Society. And, you know, given the incredible level of talent we have with our high school musicians, I know it'll be a great show. So if folks are able to, please tune in on Facebook Live.
Thank you, Jonathan. Paul.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just have a question and then an announcement. This one for Mr. Mayo. Is the ban for use of the common areas around the lake still in effect till July 6th, or is that getting eased off?
Do you mean the ban for large groups to use it?
Yeah, is it just for large groups or for all groups?
Well, at this point, we are not approving any large groups or any groups to use the common period until things change. Because how do I know they're going to socially distance, going to be, or what have you?
Right. So, but that was still in effect from a previous.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you. The next is an announcement. I'm not sure if all of you are aware, but some of you are. A small group of organizations, the Rotary Club of Wakefield, Wakefield Main Streets, Independence Day Committee, and the Event Planning Committee put together a crowdfunding measure to support the small businesses in the community that were suffering from the COVID crisis. We put a goal of $25,000 out initially. As of right now, we have taken in over $70,000 to support the merchants in this community. I can't give enough thanks to the outreach and outpouring of the people of this town. They are, above all other communities, they are the best. They saw an opportunity to support a cause and they went overboard in doing it. A couple of donations were of a very large number. I thank each and every one of those donors, and all the ways down to the donors that were giving $20 to support this. But a great cause to support the merchants who fill out applications to apply for the gift, the grant. We look forward to having the problem of determining who gets how much. So it's a great way of telling the businesses in this community, thank you. That's my big announcement tonight.
Thank you, Paul. That's great news. Julie Smith-Galvin.
A couple of things. First, I just wanted to say I've been hearing from people about how much they really like the Zoom calls during this and the recordings and everything. And I'm really hoping, I know we've been talking about it for a long time, but when things start to normalize again, I'm hoping that we can figure out a way to continue that. So that's just something long-term to think about. The Environmental Sustainability Committee met a couple of weeks ago, and thanks to collaboration from Steve and Town Hall, we're going to set up a bag recycling, I think at Town Hall in the next couple of days, so that, you know, there's been a lot more bags with the requiring them, or there's no more bans on them. And it will include things like bread bags and things that have never been part of that. So we're going to be collecting them, holding them, and then working with a commercial program that can turn them into benches around town. So we'll be doing some promo around that. And thank you so much, Steve, for helping to accommodate that. And then finally, and perhaps Mr. Dombrowski will talk about this, but we both participated in the Youth Council. Their first kickoff meeting this week was really, really amazing. Great group of students, which we all know because we appointed them and have seen their credentials, but super involved and lots of good ideas. And Catherine is really a perfect leader for them. So it was, I'm sure Ed can add to it, but it was really inspiring. So thanks to everybody for that.
Thanks, Julie. Maureen next, and then Ed.
Thank you. So just a couple of things. One, thank you again to Jen McDonald and Steve for the spring newsletter that came out last week. So great. If you haven't seen it, please look at it. It's something, you know, we'd been talking about for a while, and I love it. I think it's such a great way to share information. So it's online, linked, find it. We just approved the Pride flag hanging up starting June 1st, just for everyone to be aware that the Human Rights Commission will be celebrating the whole month of Pride with a lot of social media ask and storytelling and information sharing. So just be on the lookout, follow the town's Facebook page and also the Human Rights Commission's Facebook page for that. I'm hoping, Anne, in your wrap-ups, you will talk about Memorial Day, as we do not have our regularly functioned Memorial Day, but still made it memorable. So I'm hoping to look forward to that. And just another thing to add on lastly, and this is also maybe matters not anticipated, gathering on what Julie said. So I've been so impressed by all our groups just going to Zoom. So from HRC and all these groups, and I'm realizing we kind of threw people into it without kind of having any rules or explaining anything. And I'm wondering if, you know, we talked about this, we just appointed all these great new volunteers, but in the future, you know, Anne, and you're previously being the liaison to the committees, but do we do some sort of training of, you know, this is how you create an agenda and this is how you have to get your minutes in. Sure. We've just had so many new people, and I think with the world of Zoom, it's just so different. And I think it would be appreciated with all these amazing volunteers that we have. So just something to think about.
Great idea.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. Ed.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to remind everyone again that the Wakefield Food Pantry is always looking for donations, and cash is actually the best, because for every $1 that you donate, they can secure $4 worth of food for our community. I know that they have had a tremendous uptick in guests coming on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and so the need is great, and it impacts our community directly. So I just want to remind everyone on that. Picking up on Vice Chair Smith Galvin's point too, the Youth Council meeting this past week, it was great to see the enthusiasm, and Catherine is a perfect fit as an advisor. She's reached out to them, and Catherine has already indicated some of the priorities that they've identified to her, and they're broad ranging, and I think it's an ambitious agenda that they have, and it's exciting. And so I'm really encouraged by what I think we'll be seeing in the months to come from that group. I think they're going to hit the ground running, and they've got great leadership and great talent there. So it was a pleasure to take part along with Julian and a number of other folks this past week. So with that, thank you.
Great, thank you. And the Memorial Day celebration was really very poignant and sweet to be a part of. And they did it in the West Side Social Club, and Jay Panette I was talking to as well. The West Side Social Club still honored the veterans. They still honored the trees planted in memory of those that we lost, our sons of Wakefield that we lost. And they did it in such a responsible, socially distanced, mask-wearing way. I took off my mask to make my brief comments, but other than that, we were all really respectful of the seriousness of COVID-19, but still wanting to honor those that we have lost. So I want to thank West Side Social Club so much. And Jay Panetta, I also know, decorated graves. So thank them very much. And it was, Jonathan Chines had reminded me to ask for a moment of silence, and I am embarrassed to say I completely forgot in getting the meeting going that we didn't have a moment of silence for Memorial Day. So I do apologize for that, but I know that everyone was thinking of all our beautiful ceremonies that we couldn't have. Wakefield does such a beautiful job, and it was a shame to not have that, but in their own little ways, I think we honored the memories quite well. And last thing I have to say, I'm going to ask Tom Mullen. Tom, there you are. Look at you. You were so still. I thought that was a picture. There has kind of to cure bad facts that might be out there. I just want you to give a really short tutorial on if someone on a committee has realized that there might be a conflict of interest, what are those options? We live in a small town. We appoint folks within our small world. And I think there's probably on any committee, on any given appointment or day, folks will have conflict of interest that come up. So there's a way to handle that. We all take ethics, our course. And if there is a conflict, one can recuse themselves. So Tom, can you just remind us of that? Because I don't want folks to think that we have people serving on committees that have stakes in businesses and that they continue to serve in a capacity on that particular business.
Sure. First of all, anybody who suspects that he may have an ethical issue, who even thinks that he's got a conflict of interest, is always welcome to call me, and I can speak with him confidentially about it. They can also talk directly to the State Ethics Commission's lawyer of the day, who will offer advice. And I've got to say, there's been no reluctance on the part of Wakefield officials in doing this. They call me all the time on the merest suspicion that they might have some reason why they should recuse themselves. So people are very good at self-reporting about this. And well, they should be. It's a crime to violate the state ethics law. So as everybody knows who gets appointed, because they automatically get information about the state ethics law from the town clerk. If after thinking about it or consulting with me or consulting with the State Ethics Commission, a local official, whether it be an officer or a member of a board, elected or appointed, thinks that he may have a financial interest in a particular matter that comes before him, he is generally supposed to not handle it. He's supposed to step away, recuse himself from it. There are some situations that get awfully technical where you can act notwithstanding the existence of such a conflict, but that's the kind of thing that requires separate consultation. The fact that somebody gets appointed to a board and he may, because he's in the private sector, have once dealt with somebody who later comes before his board, that's really no disqualifier. It would be impossible to vet people like that. It would, I think, in effect, preclude virtually anybody who is or has been in the private sector from contributing their talents to local boards. So did I hit on what you were asking about?
Great reminder, Tom. And I also think it's good for folks to reach out to you because what a layperson might think is a conflict of interest is not always a conflict of interest. Right. So I think it's great for our committees to be reminded that you're always a great option for that. So thank you so much. Yeah. And before I go to matters not anticipated, as a graduate of Wakefield High School, feeling silly in Stoneham colors right now because we lost a bet, but I am at the same time absolutely heartbroken for you for not having the experiences that you should have. but so proud of all the accomplishments you've made. I know so many of you because I have children on either side of you. And so I really want to say that we are so proud, and we understand how hard this is, and you have great things ahead of you. So we know that you will certainly make us proud, make your families proud, and we just want to send our best wishes as well. Matters not anticipated before the agenda. I don't have any. Does anyone else have anything that falls under that? Paul.
Madam Chair, I'm not even sure if it does or not, but I'm going to bring it up. It was brought to my attention that there's 3 areas in close proximity to my home that are in need of some sort of repair done by the DPW. Is there any way that we can have the DPW presented or made aware of the information at hand? I know that Mr. Mayor was given 1 or 2 of the items. There's another one that I just recently saw on Farm Street. That definitely are all DPW issues, but I'm not sure if it was something that should be brought up at a meeting coming up, or it's something that could have been handled in the prior item before this.
I would say that we have a direct line to the DPW and Steve Mayo, so let him know. And Joe Conway has been nothing but responsive to any time we have contacted him. So if we know about issues that the DPW may need to address, just let Steve know.
Okay, so I'll just make it.
I don't think we need to do it at a meeting.
Okay, no, that's fine. I just want the guidance on it, so that's fine. I'll send an email to Steve.
Perfect. So, hearing that, do we have a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Moved by Ed.
Second.
Second by Paul. Jonathan.
Yes.
Ed.
Aye.
Paul.
Yes.
Maureen.
Yes.
Julie.
Yes.
Peter.
Yes.
And yes for me. Thank you all for watching and taking part in our Zoom meeting, and I hope you all have a wonderful week. Take care.